confusion, the anxiety, some anger, for some other people, just helplessness last week when that deadline hit home for a lot of people, the NIN-Sim linkage. I can't remember for how long we've talked about this, for years really, deadlines upon deadlines, but it looks like there's some finality to this deadline. Or is that the case? Well, let's find out from the agency which is central to the operations of the NIN-Sim linkage. I'm talking about the NCC, the Nigerian Communications Commission. And today on the show, we have a spokesperson of the NCC, the Director of Public Affairs, Mr. Ruben Morka, to answer some of those questions on your mind. Good morning, Mr. Morka. Thank you for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Thank you very much, and welcome, viewers.
You know, the NCC is maybe one of the most popular agencies right now, understandably so. Your role is central to something that is key to human existence, communication, especially at this time when you don't just do it with birds or with letters, you do it with mobile phones. Let's begin with this one. How many subscribers, or let me say, how many phone lines have been barred right now, just to put the figures straight now?
Well, it will be difficult to place a hand on the actual number of phone lines that have been barred, but take it that everybody who has not submitted his NIN to the service providers have been barred. And of course, this barring has taken place for almost, actually the service providers started barring people many days to the deadline. And before the deadline, I think all those that have not submitted their NIN to the service providers have been barred. So talking about numbers, it is difficult to get the numbers of the all the people, subscribers that have been barred, but we're expecting to do an audit of that before the end of the week, because the service providers ought to be sending the data of all the number of subscribers that have been barred to the NCC, upon which we will carry out a verification. We originally have the number of subscribers which we know that do not have their NIN attached to their SIM. So those, we believe, have been barred from the network.
Well, some will say this is bad. But this is bad for them, having this barring happen. We understand that the directive was given for 12 million lines to be barred. It's a very tricky one now, using those two terms. So you might want to confirm that. But the question on the mind of a lot of people is this: when you buy your SIM cards, wherever, the appropriate thing, in fact, it's statutory, for you to register that line before you're able to use it. And you have to give your details, you have to give your thumbprint, you have to provide your NIN. So a lot of people always wonder, why do I go through that process, leave that place, only to get home and I get notifications, link your NIN to your SIM. And you're wondering, I thought that was what I did when I registered the line. Plus, people wake up in the morning, the first call they make is, hello there, have you registered or have you linked your NIN to your SIM? And they're wondering, I thought I did this, what is going on? So I'd like you to speak to that, because it's been a major question people are asking.
Yeah, the issue is that you understand we have SIM registration, where you have to provide those biometrics and a lot of items to enable you own a SIM or put a face or identity to your SIM. And the NIN is the identity by policy of the Federation, the identity that every individual should have. So the process is to ensure that your identity is attached to your SIM. Otherwise, one of the benefits of SIM registration is to have a digital identity, and the Nigerian government is very serious about having identity as managed by NIN. So the idea is to ensure that we have those together. And some of the objectives of SIM card registration, if you remember, includes purposes of security and national planning. It also includes know your customer details and likes and dislikes, which the operators use And of course, SIM card registration itself, which is very important for you. But what happened was that at some point, there are people who probably didn't get a cleared or verified NIN. So the earlier ones they submitted was not good, or their SIM card registration validation, maybe there were some issues with identities, maybe what you did with a NIN, if you come to validate your SIM, it is different, maybe in terms of name, in terms of other details that are needed to align for it to be valid. So that is the reason. Maybe some mistakes on the part of the subscribers who give different information at different points, either in registering the SIM card or registering NIN. So it is to make these come together to make you have a digital identity that will also help in tackling security matters and also know your customer details and things like that. That is the reason.
Mr. Moka, let's do some, what I may call some basic housekeeping. Sometimes, I don't know what you heard, but sometimes Nigerians are a bit concerned about, is it duplicity or multiplicity or the cumbersome nature of some of these things in their view, because this is technology, it's supposed to be making life easier for the people. So sometimes, do you think that that's the reluctance that greets some of these directives by regulators like you? On one hand, do NIN-Sim registration, BVN, NIN registration, and don't you think that if everything is digitalized as much as possible, this will kind of prop people and encourage them to follow through way easier and make the work easy for regulators like you as well as the operators?
Yes, I think so. And I think that is one of the objectives, because when you have identities of individuals using telephone and their national identity together in one digital format and one digital database, it makes life difficult. And you see that the barring of people without NIN has taken a very long time to come. Since 2022, we have been, as you mentioned earlier, we have been going through one deadline and another, and we continue to give consideration for convenience. But we think that it is time to come to a closure, especially in getting these NIN and SIM linked together, and also verify the NIN. There are still some subscribers whose NIN are yet to be verified by NIN-Sim, and those have to also be corrected. So the whole essence is actually to achieve the convenience that digital services and products will offer. Because by the time you have your identities together, everything in one box, you will be able to attend to a number of things. If you remember, even the banks are now asking that NIN should be linked to the BVNs and things like that. So it is actually to make a holistic package of all your digital services. So this particular activity is actually going to enhance those conveniences that we talked about. We talked about know your customer details. For something like that, it is also part of it, because if your customer, your service provider knows all your details, they will be able to provide you with certain digital services that are available on the market.
Mr. Moka, I don't know whether you answered my question or I didn't. I meant that the whole registration process, can't it be done digitally without necessarily going to crowd these places, whether you want to do biometrics or not, and all of those things we talked about? Are we looking in that direction, or is it just a tall order because technology cannot provide for that?
Well, at this stage, we will not be able to do all that, because, as I said, some identity issues when you come about SIM registration, if you've given a different number and or different names in your SIM card registration, and in your NIN you have a different one, you need to go to the service provider's location to be able to validate your NIN, verify your NIN, and also validate the details to make sure that both align together. Now, what you're saying, it will become possible in future if we have all these cleansed up. Because if you clean it up, you can now further additions. You may not be requiring to visit the operator's place, but at that initial stage when all those data have variances, there is need for it to come together, and it means that it requires that somebody physically visits the service provider. If you remember, during the SIM card registration, everybody is supposed to present himself, take your biometrics, and take all the details that is required, your passport and all those, and put it together to make it one holistic identity information. But where people even when you visited and you gave different information that does at variance with what you have registered at NIN, it needs to be verified and validated and aligned. So that is basically the situation. So for now, it requires that physical visit to get those things validated and verified. But when it comes together, I said that in future, it may no longer require manual, if you like, or physical visits to the stations to get it verified and validated.
Now, Mr. Moka, a quick follow-up to that. As we hope that it comes together, which is harmonization. Last week we learned that the challenge really is that the server that is holding this database is limited such that it cannot accommodate the surge that comes with multiple transactions when the individuals are trying to call up their NIN. What's being done at the level of collaborations and synergy, hopefully, between your agency and the NIN-Sim to expand this server so that we can have a dependable infrastructure in the future that can take and harmonize all of these data and eliminate the need for human presence in future registrations?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The NCC is working closely with NIDA. We are looking at all aspects of the registration, especially as it relates to linking the NIN to SIM. I don't understand those information that you're giving about the capacity of the database. I do not think that is the situation. The situation is about people not being able to validate the information they have, because since this NIN link validation is since the deadline or before the deadline, there has been no issues with anybody who goes to the service providers and they are unable to validate their information when they submit their NIN. It's only if the NIN is not verified, then they have to go back to be sure that the NIN submitted are valid. The issue of capacity of the data is not really the case. And when you look at it, most of the lines that are being barred have been out of, they have somehow been barred for almost a year ago. A number of subscribers have been on barred one-way service. They have been receiving calls, sending text messages, but they are unable to make calls. If you look at the report that MTN gave, it tells you that these number of people that are being barred, most of them have not been actually using their SIM to make calls because they have been barred. So majority of those barred at this deadline are those who are really not, if you like, serious with going to submit their NIN. And so the barring or the problems has nothing much to do with the capacity of the database to accommodate those who have submitted their NIN to their SIM, or those who want to verify the status of their services.
Well, Mr. Moka, I wonder if you heard me correctly. I didn't talk about the capacity of the database. I talked about the capacity of the server. But perhaps you'd like to respond to some of the questions coming in from our viewers. This is someone writing in from abroad, and he says, I live abroad, and as I write, have visited my bank online page. It took me several hours to generate NIN, then several hours to generate OTP. And even then, it's been failed verification messages. Even on the NIN-Sim site, my last phone number used in 2016, which I no longer use, is still there, despite the fact that it's deactivated supposedly. Why is it that once government brings innovation, it always results in a headache? To summarize it.
Okay, first, I talked about the database because the server is also a product of the database. So what I'm talking about is that it is not actually a problem with server, as it were. Then the gentleman talking about difficulties in maybe getting validation or verifying information from the whatever source in Nigeria or the banks. I think it is not something very different from what you witness in every other part of the world. It is actually, we need to appreciate the level of our digital advancement, and it's not as if it is just so excellent that wherever you are, sometimes it is not necessarily the issue with the service provider. Sometimes it is not necessarily the problem with the bank or NIN-Sim. It could be a network issue. So it comes in various forms. But I think substantially, a lot of people from outside the world, especially at this level of advancement, can easily do a lot of those things. The headache, he calls it, but I think we are really trying as a nation in terms of our level of development and accessibility to digital platforms and digital services.
I think the other big one for a lot of people would be the quality of service. Last week was hellish for a lot of people. Calls, data, it was a tough time, and a lot of people were worried. Is this Armageddon or something? Is this the end of the world where we can't reach people? It was total chaos. And I know some explanations have been given, but a lot of people say, well, this is like every other day for us. And the question is always, what is a regulator doing to ensure better quality of service? That's on the one hand. And then quality of data, and then the pricing as well. Because a lot of people say, we're not getting value for how much we're paying. I wonder what you have to say to that as a regulator.
Well, I really appreciate some of the issues tending to quality of service. Recently, there were some issues with making calls, but these are associated with the challenges of quality of service that is in the country. Because the operators, I can tell you that no operator will be happy that people are unable to make calls, because when that happens, it means they are not making money and they are not providing the service. So it is I think every operator would want an uninterruptible telecommunication services, be it data, be it voice, or whatever. But sometimes there are some factors that militate against that quality of service, sometimes beyond the scope of the operator. For instance, if there is a major fiber cut, as we witnessed maybe during construction or environmental issues, there will be that disruption in quality of service. But it is something that the Commission is taking very seriously. If you remember, the Executive Vice Chairman of the Commission, Dr. Aminu Maida, one of his 3 focus areas is quality of service. And this time, he says it is quality of experience. So the totality of the quality of experience of the customer is at focus this time. You know, before we used to measure the performance of the service providers in terms of quality of service, and sometimes the indices that we have kept as KPIs are met, but it doesn't translate in the experience of the consumer. Now, the management of the commission is focusing on total quality of experience, especially as it concerns the consumer, which is the first item or the first stakeholder in consideration in our regulatory services, because if you don't have consumers, you don't have the funding or the money that enables the services and enables the people that have invested to earn from their investment. So the consideration of quality of service is at prime in NCC at this moment, and we are focusing, as I have explained, on the experience of the customer. So we are on the service providers, ensuring that they actually attend to the needs of the consumers. But as I said, in some circumstances, it goes beyond the scope of the service provider when there are major challenges of cuts or situations of downtime in the network.
So,
it's a work in progress, if you ask me.
Ms. Amoka, building on what you said, so is the NCC as a regulator doing anything for inefficiency within the or amongst the operators? So whether there's a cut or this chaotic network situation, somebody's losing money. Somebody may even lose their life. What is the NCC doing to ensure that damages are paid or people, take responsibility for their actions?
Yeah, part of improving quality of experience of the consumer is actually ensuring that the operators, the service providers, deliver to their obligations. They have obligations to provide quality services, to ensure that the customer does not suffer while using the services. So the Commission is enhancing its, if you like, control or monitoring of the performance of the operators, their compliance to their obligations, their compliance to those variables that enable quality of service to improve. So you know that as a Commission, we have taken compliance very seriously, because when operators or when service providers do not meet their obligations to compliance, we will actually take steps to ensure that this is done. So compliance is taken very seriously. Operators are meant to comply to all the rules of the game, also in order to ensure that the customers have value for money they are spending. So when we talk about improving quality of experience, that is actually telling you that we have our eyes open and focused on the service provider, on how he provides those services to the benefit of the consumers.
Well, Mr. Moka, this one is from Tom Egbele Jos, and he says, it is regrettable to inform your guests that despite the previously captured SIM NIN registration, terrorists have been found to use SIM or phones of their victims to place call to friends and relatives of their victims to make ransom demands, therefore defeating the purpose of this exercise. And that speaks to the question answered by the former Minister of Communications that presided over your agency on X just a few months ago during the Nabiya kidnap, where he says that the NIN-Sim policy was working, but that institutions don't seek the information. Perhaps you'll help us understand what happens at the back end of operations between your agency and relevant agencies that need this information. Why don't they seek it to tackle security challenges such as kidnapping for ransom?
Well, NCC is not really a security agency. I think there's a lot of misinterpretation about what we regulate. We regulate services that help security agencies tackle crime. It's difficult to begin to attend to issue that a bandit, for instance, uses a phone of the victim to make calls to the family or something. because there is nothing one can do about it except the security agencies find a way around it. Because it is a situation that, I mean, imagine a scenario, the bandit carrying the number of relative and using, I mean, a victim and using it to call the family. What would NCC do about it? Or even a service provider, or even the security agencies? All said, the issue is the reason why we are talking about NIN-Sim linkage, talking about the people using phones to have their identities. Because at the end of the day, it is using those phones that will be able to even help security agencies to track such calls that you talked about.
Pardon
so
me,
it is
Mr.
a
Moka.
duty of the security agencies, but we're providing all the necessary
Mr. Moka, pardon me if I may come in there. If security agents were to seek information about a particular line that is calling another for ransom for the kidnap of a loved one, which agency of the federal government will they be applying to for such information to be provided so that they can track the location of that line?
It is the police that they will apply to. I think any of such application goes to any ranking police officer from the rank of deputy commissioner and below. Any of those information addressed to them, they will be able to do that tracking. And as I said before, that tracking will not be possible if the identities or if the SIM card of that victim is not properly registered and also linked to NIN. Because you cannot, if you don't have those identities, then the police or whichever security agency will not be able to track. So the essence of submitting these identities is to also assist the security agencies in fighting crimes. And they may not tell you the number of crimes they have also resolved by use of well-identified individuals using phones.
Well, we can also talk about how there needs to be the tracking equipment in the first place. We've heard stories about how the tracking equipment broke down, this and that, and then whether or not the security operatives are willing to go into the forest. So there's a whole conversation around this, but it's important to tidy up your end, and that's the NIN part. So we know that there is the database we can rely on when we have security issues, which, by the way, we don't look forward to. But there's still more questions coming for you, Mr. Moka. Abdul Ghaffar from Abuja saying, most of us got our NIN registration via BVN. Why are the banks calling on their customers to come and relink? I think it ties to the question I asked earlier. Also, linking NIN with my line had been failing despite the NIN being verified and all. Also, Tom of Plateau on X says, my SIM that I actively use was barred from calls coming in. Went to the office in Bauchi, did everything, was told it would happen after 24 hours. Still, nothing has changed. You will understand why a lot of Nigerians want to ask you questions. Really, you're one of the most popular right now. So if you could take on those two issues as we wind down, Mr. Moka.
Well, for the issue that somebody has gone to validate and they didn't come out fine after 24 hours. I think sometimes there could be little delays, but if it didn't work, I'm sure that the operator will definitely call back the consumer to come and register. But what it takes, as I said, is to just visit and do that verification. Remember that some NIN that have been submitted are yet to be verified at the moment, and there was a deadline in future that those that have been unable to verify their NINs, NINs that are unable to be verified, will be also disconnected. So some of those NIN could be they haven't been verified by NIMC, and of course, by the operator through NIMC. And it could be the problem I said before, some people, the information they submitted are at variance with the information they have with their NIN. I don't remember the other question. Can you remind me the other question?
The one is about getting the NIN through BVN. So what is the point having to link it again? Since I already gave that, in fact, that was where I got it in the first place. So why are you asking me to link it? Just do your thing at the back end.
Yeah, I mean, you know the one that is obligatory is NIN to SIM. The other part of BVN is part of what I have talked about, using some digital services, some know your customer services. So I think the bank is like a value-added service to their customers, so that if they link their NIN to their BVN, it will also help the banks to also provide some of the services that are maybe desirable to the consumers. So there is no obligation. It's not a federal government directive that you link your NIN and everything to your BVN. I think it is a service that bankers are taking the opportunity of the digital advancements to ask for that NIN, and its improvement of our digital identities. You remember there was a time that the banks were asking their customers to come and register and give all their identities. Those were to enable them to enjoy some digital services. So I think that the reason they are asking consumers to come and submit their NIN also to them is also to enable the availability of such digital services.
We have to run now. We really overshot our time, but it's understandable. This is a big one. We'll have to thank you so much. We're speaking with Mr. Ruben Moka, who's the Director of Public Affairs at the NCC. We hope we can do this from time to time as often as we can, because, I mean, you're the Nigerian Communications Commission. There needs to be communication, but thank you so much for your time on the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right. We'll go to break now, and when we return, we'll have a softer side of things. Yes, he's been called the soft guy, literally. Ebuka is right here with us, and he's up in just a couple of seconds. Stay with us till the morning brief.